Hey guys, welcome back for another Too Long Didn't Watch video. We're going to be going over Tartaglia today. Before we go over how this character works, I just want to reiterate, like we do in every video, that you can use any character the way that you want. So if you want to use Barbara as the best DPS in the game, you do it. Just realize that in doing so, you might not be able to clear the hardest content, right? We're going to put this disclaimer out here every video: waifu over meta every single time. If you got a waifu, you got a husbando, play that character. Don't worry about the meta. There are only a few places in this entire game that will challenge you, and you'll need to have, proper strategy and proper team compositions and stuff like that. Alright guys, well let's get into it. So I've had Childe since he came out on his original banner, so I've been using him, periodically for a long time now. These are the stats that my Childe currently has. I'll be calling him Childe and Tartaglia back and forth, throughout this whole video, so sorry about that. So now that we've taken a brief look at stats, let's talk about what this character actually does. One important thing to note is that this character focuses really heavily on this Riptide effect. It can be applied during a crit on his melee form or a charge shot from his regular form. When you use Childe's elemental skill, he'll actually switch to a melee stance. While in this stance, his crits will apply Riptide, and then if you hit an enemy with the melee attacks that already has Riptide, they'll then explode as well. What this means is that Childe is actually really good at doing AoE damage. So here you see we switch to our melee stance and we're doing some of our melee attacks just on the air to show you guys. And then when we're done, we end the skill and go back to regular form. In his standard bow stance, he'll apply the Riptide to enemies, and then if you hit them again with a charge attack, he'll actually do an AoE that does damage over time. His elemental burst or his ultimate also has a melee and a ranged version. The ranged version will apply Riptide to all enemies hit and will give energy back, while the melee one consumes the Riptide status effect on enemies hit and makes them do an AoE explosion. As you can see, the modifiers are pretty nice. So all of Childe's passives are really important to him. So extending the duration of Riptide is really good because you can get more procs off when you're in melee stance. His second passive is what allows him to apply Riptide on a crit hit when he's in melee stance. Again, very important, especially if you're going to be using his ultimate while in melee stance. And then his final passive just gives him an extra level for his normal attack, which is really strong, but it also works for any of your teammates as well. As you can see in the video, his attack level is level 9, but actually it's only level 8. You have a lot of different options for weapons for him. I use the Vertison Hunt. The crit's nice, the effect is pretty good at pulling all enemies closer together, and then you can also use Rust or, pretty much any other bow you can get your hands on. Pretty much any of the 5-star bows are going to work as well. For our set, I went with the Heart of the Depths, but you can also use other options as well. If you're trying to go for like a freeze team, you could actually use the Blizzard Strayer set. What we're really trying to use this set for is the increased damage to our normal and charge attacks. Okay, so with all that said and done, how do I feel about this character? Is this character good? When it comes to playing with the character's strengths, right, which is a lot of what we talk about in these videos, like, one of the most important things for Childe is understanding that he's really good at AoE damage. He does not excel at single target damage. And the way that we want to play this character is we want to have a lot of adds similar to what you're seeing right now, hopefully a little more clustered together, so that way we can hit them all and get Riptide on them all, and then make every hit in our melee form do a bunch of explosions all at once. And then on top of that, being able to use the melee ult and getting a big burst of damage there too. Because of this, a lot of people learn even further into it, kind of like what you're seeing here, is this is what's known as a taser team, right? So by doing an electro charge team, all this electro, all this water, we can then do even more AoE damage, so we're just kind of leaning further into that and just going full AoE, which is really awesome. Here's the downside though. As you just saw, when we were switching to Childe, he actually didn't have his abilities back up. So he doesn't have the ability to stay in his melee stance for very long. Look, he still doesn't have it. An extra 10 seconds we're going to have to wait to get back in there. Because you have to remember, the amount of time that he's in his melee stance plus 6 seconds, that's how long the cooldown is. So if you're in this melee stance for 20 seconds, it's a 26-second cooldown after it's finished. And then on top of that, like, realistically, what are you struggling with? What is it that's taking you a long time to kill? Is it a bunch of smaller adds that you can group together and just AoE down? Or is it one of these bigger tanky guys like the Magu Kenki you're watching right now? More often than not, I feel like what I'm struggling with are the big tanky guys. And there aren't that many situations where I'm sitting there wishing I had more AoE damage. In most cases, if I want more AoE damage, I can just bring, a different AoE character, oftentimes for me personally, an Animo character. Someone like Kaza, someone like Venti, someone like Sucrose, pulling stuff together, making my life easier so that way I can just do some big hits on a bunch of guys at once. And we're just talking about C0 here. If you start looking at C1, like he gets more uptime on his melee skill, as you get farther in, you'll do more Riptide damage, stuff like that. But you have to build this character knowing that you're going to be spending a lot of time either doing his bow auto attacks, which aren't that good, or, switching between your other characters. So in this team, I use the Shogun to kind of help fill that gap, right? So she's going to be on the field during her ultimate. It's a big burst ultimate that, I'm not going to be missing his damage as much. That long cooldown time really affects what type of team compositions he can really fit into. If you start looking at some of his constellations, it starts making things a lot easier and like more manageable because you get like more uptime on his melee stance. However, in his base form, he has a lot of problems. Is he fun to play? Absolutely. Is it a blast switching from range to melee and stuff? Oh yeah, hands down, it's awesome. Do I recommend anybody get Childe at C0? No, I don't. He's really fun, and I really enjoyed playing him in his C0 form, as you're seeing in these videos and stuff, to the point where I actually did pull for him when he came out yesterday, and then I got him C1 so that way I can use him more often. But even then, I did that knowing full well that like he's not going to be one of my best damage dealers. He still has a lot of the problems we talked about, even with C1, right? So none of that goes away. I will say though that after, taking the time to record these videos and stuff like that and do these fights with C0 Childe, going through and playing after I got his C1, it was really noticeable how much it actually improved his melee uptime. So if you are interested in Childe and you do maybe want to go for C1, I do kind of recommend it, honestly. However, like I said, I'm not recommending the character. I'm just saying, like, if he's your shtick, right? If he's your husbando, maybe consider going for C1 to help yourself out a little bit if you're, worried about the downtime in his melee stance. When Childe first came out, he was the first character that really showed like a huge difference between their like C0 and their C6 form. And I can say pretty confidently after playing with his C1 form that his constellations do a lot for him, absolutely. But my thing is I think even at C6, he's just not going to be doing what I need to be doing. Like, he's not going to suddenly fix any, huge single target DPS problems that you have, even if he gets C6. It's just not what he's going to do. He's just going to blow up AoE things faster. And don't get me wrong, I think it'd be really fun to just blow things up in AoE with 100% uptime on his melee stance, right? Like, that would be awesome. But it's a lot of money, Like, it's just not something that I can honestly recommend. So I think genuinely, no. My definitive answer is even at C1, C2 or whatever, this is not a character I would recommend. I think that you're going to be a lot better off saving your primos for like Hu Tao or potentially even a Ganyu rerun maybe. Or Kazuha would be potentially a good one. There's just other characters I feel like you could save for and get more value out of. And that's going to wrap it up for us today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys want to hang out and drop by our Twitch channel, just Zarnessen over on Twitch, the link's below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys. Peace out.